Some of you may have watched my video on corn fungicide and my thoughts for this year. Had several requests for soybean fungicide. Well, for me, soybean fungicide applications isn't as much of an yes or no every year, if, especially even pre-tar spot. If you look back at yield data, soybean fungicide paid its way a lot more often than corn did from the fact you could most of the time do it yourself and keep your costs down to a nice consistent yield response. Fungicide applications kind of getting to the point is just a given for me. It seems to work well. There's a good ROI, and the system seems to work, especially on early pointed beans. So I wanted to first cover staging. I think that's one thing that people have a hard time wrapping their mind around. So a lot of time you'll see the literature says that the correct time to put on soybean fungicide is R3. So if you look at my picture on the left there, I labeled each node. So from the top, nodes 1, 2, 3, and 4 from the top. And what you want to see is a little pod about the size of your little fingernail or close to it. So not a very big pod. And if I look at this plant, this was a 25 A16 planted on May the 4th. At nodes 3 and 4, I have a little bit of pod development going on, but not quite there yet. So getting pretty close. The picture on the right was a zoom in of that. So this plant is actually very late R2, almost R3. So just how axle wrap should you really get around that applying at that time is really the point of what I want to get across today. So to me, I would recommend almost every time that you apply a fungicide on soybeans. And then the timing thing is a lot broader than everybody thinks. This is some work that we done back when we were DuPont Pioneer, so it dates itself a little bit, but still very relevant. Looking at different timing. So we've got R1 when we're just getting that first flower up toward the top or at the bottom of the plant. Excuse me, I should say. And then looking clear through R5. So you've got definitely got a lot of pods on there at R5. And you look compared to that suggested timing at R3, you're tossing around a bushel on each side. So there really isn't a lot of different yield data there. R3, when you look at the data, is still the sweet spot on that left side there in the graph. But you can still see there's a pretty good return even at R1 and R5. So to me, if I can do anywhere from R2 to R4, I'm pretty happy. That's a good 6-week window to get soybean fungicide put on. This is our data, and if you look at on the right, our data is still there in the green, but then looking at both Iowa State and Purdue trials at that same time period, you see a similar result. So R1 doesn't pay off quite as good as R3, and R3 seems to be that sweet spot. So it is kind of the time you want to hit, but to me, R2 and R4 are going to be very close yield-wise, where I'm not going to lose any sleep if I decide to go early, if I'm already making a trip, or I'm rained out and I have to go late. So it's a pretty broad window to hit. So what about insecticides? So in our early trial work, we also broke down insecticides. So looking at this graph right here, I'm going to key in on two of these right here. So I'm going to look at my headline and the sauna, this one right here, and then I'm going to look um, over here at the side at my Quadris and Warrior. So I actually got both of them broke out over here. And what you'll see when you look at just fungicide versus fungicide and insecticide, that I get a pretty nice yield bump with insecticide. And I don't know that there's a direct causation that we know of for sure causing this consistent insecticide bump to go on. But I suspect that we have a lot of late season yield nibblers in beans, especially the ones that do quality damage to beans like stink bugs. And I'm wondering if we get some early control out of them contributing to some of these factors. So we do see a nice yield payoff with soybean insecticide as well as fungicide going together in the tank. So hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to give us a call.